Sergey arrived home later than usual. The streetlights outside glowed softly, reflecting on wet pavement after an early rain. He took a deep breath before stepping through the front door of his modest apartment in an attempt to brace himself. His coat felt heavier than before, as if it carried not only his things but his own guilt and exhaustion. The hallway was faintly lit by a single bulb, revealing a pair of slippers by the door and a faded umbrella leaning on the wall. It was familiar, the home he built, yet tonight it felt foreign. Inside, the kitchen smelled of soup. Warm broth, simmering vegetables, and fresh herbs created an inviting atmosphere. For a second, that sense of comfort washed over Sergey, but it quickly was replaced by a hollow knot in his chest. He removed his coat deliberately, hanging it on the hook with slow precision. His mind raced, searching for words, any words. But none came. From the kitchen came the sound of gentle humming. Then a soft voice, "Sergey? You're home." It was Olga. Her voice steadied his breath. He paused at the threshold of the kitchen doorway. Olga turned, a gentle smile lighting her face. She was wearing a simple dress, comfortable, familiar. She held a wooden spoon in one hand, a pot lid in the other. Steam drifted from the pot, curling in the warm light. "Dinner is almost ready," she said, as if nothing was wrong. He managed a nod. "Thank you." His voice was hoarse. She placed the lid down, coming forward and placing a hand on his arm, warm and steady. "Long day?" she asked. He hesitated. "Very." He nodded, his gaze shifting to the pot, to the table set for two. Everything was right, except him. He walked into the living room. A plush sofa, a small coffee table with books stacked neatly, a floor lamp casting a soft glow, peaceful. But inside Sergey, something had shifted. The apartment no longer felt like home. He took a seat, facing away from the kitchen. His back stiffened. Olga followed. She placed two bowls on the table, one for him, one for her. She sat across from him with grace. "Eat," she urged gently. He picked up his spoon and tasted the soup. It was perfect, just like she always made, but the taste felt empty. He paused mid-sip, stirring the spoon, his mind elsewhere. During the silence, memories flooded in. 5 years ago, their wedding day. Sergey adjusting his tie, Olga laughing as she fussed over his stray hair. He remembered the innocence, the promise. Then came the tougher times, long work hours, silent meals, small arguments that faded quickly. But tonight was different. He swallowed. "Olga," his voice crackled. She paused, eyes warm and patient. He searched for courage. "We need to talk." It was quiet, but like thunder in his head. Olga's face shifted, confusion, concern, eyes searching his. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Okay." He waited, noticing how her hand trembled slightly. I met someone." The words hovered between them. The air felt thick. He watched her swallow, her knuckles whitening as she gripped the spoon. "And it's not who you think." Silence exploded. Only the ticking of the clock filled the room. Olga blinked. "What?" "We need to discuss what comes next." Tears welled up in her eyes. She dropped the spoon. It clinked on the table, then snapped free. Soup sloshed. She looked at him, tremor in her voice. "Are you leaving?" He closed his eyes. "I don't know." She shook her head, her voice breaking. "After everything? After this?" He stood abruptly, chair scraping floor. "I can't." She stood too, shock contorting her face. She saw him hesitate at the door, coat in hand, keys ready. She gathered her courage. "Please, tell me true." He met her eyes, his were hollow. "I'm sorry." Sergey stood in the hallway, his hand still resting on the doorknob, as if hesitating to take another step. The silence around him was thick, broken only by the faint ticking of a wall clock. Every tick sounded like a hammer inside his head. He turned slightly, glancing at Olga sitting on the couch behind him. Her eyes were fixed on him, wide, filled with disbelief and something deeper, something broken. The tea she had prepared for him stood untouched on the table, steam rising in soft spirals, fading like the warmth between them. Why did I say it like that? Sergey thought, feeling a strange emptiness fill his chest. Why so cold? Why so final? But the words were already spoken, and they hung between them like a sharp blade. He took a slow breath, trying to gather the courage to move. His suitcase felt heavier than it should, not because of its contents, but because of what it meant. The end of years spent together, the shared mornings and quiet evenings, the small rituals that made life feel safe, if not perfect. Olga didn't move. Her eyes followed him, searching for something, an explanation, a trace of regret, a sign that this was all some cruel joke. But he had none to offer. He stepped out into the hallway, pulling the door closed behind him. The click of the lock echoed through the apartment like a gunshot. For a moment, he simply stood there, staring at the closed door. A wave of nausea rolled over him. His fingers trembled slightly. What am I doing? He asked himself. Is this really freedom? Or am I just running away from something I don't have the strength to fix? But another image pushed its way into his mind. A younger woman's smile, laughter like music, promises of passion and excitement that life with Olga had long lost. Or perhaps he had simply stopped noticing them. He descended the stairs slowly, the suitcase thumping against each step, as if reminding him of the weight of his choice. Outside, the city was cold and indifferent. Neon lights blinked in the distance, cars rushed by, and strangers hurried past, each lost in their own troubles. No one cared that a man had just broken his life in two. He hailed a taxi. Where to? The driver asked without looking. Sergey hesitated. His mind went blank. Where was he going? To freedom? To betrayal? To ruin? To the apartment on Leninskaya, he finally said. His new life. His new prison? The car pulled away from the curb, swallowing him into the night. Meanwhile, Olga sat frozen in the living room. The world seemed to spin around her, distant and surreal. The cup of tea cooled slowly on the table, forgotten. Her hands lay limp in her lap. She replayed his words again and again in her mind, each time cutting deeper. I met someone else. I want a divorce. That wasn't Sergey. Not the man she had built her life with. Not the man who once brought her flowers for no reason, who whispered promises into her hair late at night. Where had he gone? When had he changed? Or had I changed? The thought crept into her mind like poison. Maybe she had become boring, predictable. Maybe she had lost the spark that once made his eyes light up when she entered the room. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she wiped them away angrily. No, I will not cry for him. Not yet. She stood, pacing the room like a trapped animal. Every object reminded her of him. The photos on the wall, the books they chose together, the couch where they spent quiet evenings watching films. How do you erase a lifetime? She thought bitterly. How do you make yourself forget? Her gaze fell on the hallway mirror. She approached slowly, staring at her own reflection. Her face looked tired. Lines of worry and sadness marked her skin. But behind the exhaustion, there was something else, something fierce. A fire that refused to die. He thinks he can leave me for some girl? Like I'm nothing. Her jaw tightened. We'll see about that. A sudden thought flashed through her mind, shocking, dangerous, thrilling. I'll change. I'll become stronger, more beautiful, more successful than ever before. And when he comes crawling back, full of regret, I'll be the one to turn him away. The idea warmed her, gave her strength. She wiped her eyes again, standing taller. The quiet sadness in the room was replaced by determination. No, this was not the end. This was the beginning. Meanwhile, in the taxi, Sergey stared out the window at the passing city lights. Why do I feel like this? He wondered. Why does this feel like a mistake? The thought of freedom had thrilled him once. The idea of a new woman, a new life, new adventures. But now, Now all he could think about was Olga's face, her smile, the quiet way she hummed when cooking, the way she always knew when something was wrong. I should be happy, he told himself. I made my choice. I have a new start. But the excitement was gone. In its place was doubt, regret, and fear. The car stopped in front of a modern apartment building. His new home, his new life. He paid the driver and stepped out into the cold night air. The door buzzed open. The elevator carried him up, silent and judgmental. On the 7th floor, he stepped out into the hallway. She was waiting, young, beautiful, smiling. But somehow, her smile felt different tonight. Colder, sharper, as if she knew he had nowhere else to go. Hey, baby, she purred, wrapping her arms around him. I missed you. He forced a smile, kissing her lightly. But inside, something twisted. What have I done? He thought. What have I lost? And behind him, far away in a quiet apartment, Olga was changing, becoming someone he would soon no longer recognize. Someone strong, someone dangerous, someone free. He stared at the screen without answering. The thought of returning to that small, soulless apartment with her felt unbearable. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to feel the full extent of his mistake. A deep sigh escaped him. What have I done? He murmured, burying his face in his hands. Memories flooded his mind. Olga laughing on the beach during their honeymoon. Olga nervously decorating the Christmas tree their first year together. Olga waiting for him late at night when he worked overtime, worried but never complaining. He had thrown all of that away for excitement. And what had he gained? Loneliness, emptiness, a shallow relationship that lacked the comfort of real connection. His heart ached. The doorbell rang, startling him from his thoughts. For a wild moment, hope flared in his chest. Was it Olga? Had she come to forgive him? No, that was impossible. He opened the door. A delivery man stood there, holding a bag from an expensive boutique. A gift his new girlfriend had ordered. Without a word, Sergey signed and took the bag, placing it carelessly on the floor. He stared out into the hallway, wishing more than anything that he could turn back time. Go back to that evening when Olga had greeted him with tea and a smile. When all it would have taken was honesty, a conversation, an apology. But pride and selfishness had sealed his fate. Hours passed. Night fell. Sergey sat in darkness, lit only by the city lights outside the window. His phone buzzed again and again, ignored. He could hear the faint sound of his neighbors' laughter through the walls. Families, couples, people living lives he had destroyed for himself. His thoughts grew heavier. What if Olga had truly moved on? What if she found someone better? Someone kinder, more patient? Someone who could give her the happiness he had denied her? The idea made his stomach twist. He stood suddenly, pacing the room, unable to bear the stillness. Every object in the apartment mocked him, reminded him of her. The framed photographs, the books they had picked out together. Even the blanket on the couch smelled faintly of her perfume. Desperation filled him. I'll call her, he whispered. I'll apologize. Beg her to forgive me. She has to listen. But fear stopped his hand. What if she refused to answer? What if she laughed? What if she had already erased him from her life? He sank back onto the couch, defeated. Maybe it was over. Maybe he had truly lost her forever. The morning after his breakdown, Sergey woke up on the same couch where he had spent the entire night. His body ached from the awkward position, but his mind was even worse, foggy, exhausted, and filled with guilt. The apartment was still dark, save for the faint glow of early sunlight seeping through the curtains. He sat up slowly, the weight of everything crashing back onto his shoulders like a heavy cloak. He hadn't responded to a single message from his new girlfriend. He couldn't, not when every part of him felt like it had shattered. In the kitchen, he made coffee in silence, the way Olga used to. Same cup, same routine. but the absence of her presence made every motion feel robotic and hollow. He took a slow sip, staring blankly out the window. And then he opened his laptop. For the first time since the breakup, Sergey began writing. Not an email, not a message to anyone, just thoughts, feelings. He didn't even know what he was doing at first, but the words came like a storm. He wrote about the loneliness he felt even when he was in a relationship. He wrote about the arguments, the avoidance, the way they had slowly stopped talking like they used to. He wrote about his mistakes and how he ran away instead of facing the truth. Tears formed in his eyes, but he kept going. He remembered the way Olga would touch his arm when she wanted his attention gently, how she would whisper encouragement when he doubted himself. He realized, painfully, that he had taken all of that for granted. Suddenly, his phone rang. It was her. His hands trembled. He stared at the screen, her name glowing softly. A name he hadn't seen for days. A name that now felt like both a blessing and a curse. He couldn't answer. Not yet. The call ended. But something stirred inside him. A shift. Maybe not hope, but at least the will to try. Later that afternoon, Sergey left the apartment. He walked through the city with no destination in mind. The world around him continued as usual. Children laughing in parks, couples holding hands, street performers playing music. The normalcy of life hit him like a contrast to the chaos inside his soul. He wandered into an old bookstore, one they used to visit together. He remembered how Olga would always lose track of time between the shelves, always walking out with something new to read. As he passed by the romance section, he spotted a book she once loved. Without thinking, he bought it. Back outside, he sat on a bench and opened the book. A note fell out. Not a real note, just an old receipt that someone had used as a bookmark. But something about it made Sergey pause. It was dated 2 years ago, around the time he and Olga were still happy. He stared at the date, and time seemed to slow. What am I doing? He thought. What if I'm not too late? What if I still have a chance? That evening, Sergey returned to the apartment and began to write again. This time, it wasn't just thoughts. It was a letter. To Olga. He didn't know if he'd ever send it, but he poured everything into it. I don't know if you'll ever read this. Maybe it's selfish to write. Maybe I should let you go. But I need you to know the truth. I made a mistake, one I carry with me every day. Not just leaving. Not just the affair. The real mistake was not fighting for us when we still had something to save. I got scared. I got weak. And I let you down. I know that. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve that. But I miss you. I miss your voice, your kindness, your way of seeing the good even when things got hard. I'm sorry, Olga. Truly. For everything. He stared at the letter for a long time. And then he printed it, folded it, put it in an envelope. He didn't send it that night. He placed it on his nightstand. But the act of writing it, of confronting his guilt and taking responsibility, felt like the first breath of air after drowning for so long. That night, for the first time in weeks, Sergey slept in his bed, alone, but not numb. The next morning was different. For the first time in weeks, Sergey awoke feeling something close to clarity. The sunlight streaming through the curtains didn't seem hostile anymore. It felt like a quiet invitation to start over. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the envelope on his nightstand. The letter to Olga. His fingers brushed the paper gently, but he didn't pick it up. Not yet, he whispered to himself. But soon, after showering and dressing, Sergey grabbed his coat and stepped outside. The city air felt crisp against his skin. The world, busy and alive, moved around him as if nothing had changed, but inside, he felt the stirrings of something new. Determination, perhaps, or simply the absence of fear. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A message from his girlfriend, the new one. The one he hadn't spoken to properly since everything fell apart. Are you okay? Please talk to me. He stared at the screen. For a long moment, he considered replying, but his fingers hovered above the keyboard. unmoving. What could he say? That he was lost? That he was broken? That everything in his life felt like a mistake? No, she deserved better than that. So instead, he pocketed the phone and kept walking. Sergey found himself standing in front of Olga's favorite cafe, a small, cozy place tucked between two larger buildings, almost invisible unless you knew it was there. The smell of fresh coffee drifted into the street. He hesitated, but his feet moved forward on their own. Inside, the cafe was nearly empty. Just a couple at the corner table and an old man reading a newspaper. Sergey approached the counter. "Americano," he said softly. The barista, a young woman with bright eyes, smiled kindly as she prepared the drink. Something about the warmth of the place made his chest tighten with memories. He and Olga had sat by the window countless times, watching the rain, sharing quiet conversations, lost in each other's presence. The coffee arrived. Sergey took it to that same window seat. He sat there for what felt like hours, staring out at the street. Cars passed. People hurried by. Life, uninterested in his sorrow, went on. And in that stillness, a strange thought entered his mind. What if I see her? What if she walks by right now? His heart quickened, but the door never opened. Eventually, Sergey pulled out a notebook and began to write again. Not a letter this time, just words. Thoughts. Fragments of clarity. I wanted something new. Something exciting. But I forgot that real love isn't excitement. It's quiet. Familiar. Like this cafe. Like the way she used to laugh at my bad jokes. I traded that for. What? Fear of boredom? Fear of routine? I was a fool. I thought passion mattered more than patience. But patience is what holds people together. The pages filled quickly. Suddenly, the chair across from him scraped against the floor. Sergey looked up. It was the old man with the newspaper. "Mind if I sit here?" the man asked gently. Sergey nodded. For a few moments, they sat in silence. Then the old man spoke. "You look like you've lost something important, son." Sergey smiled bitterly. "I lost myself." The old man chuckled softly. "Happens to the best of us. But here's the thing about losing yourself. You can always find the way back. If you want to." Sergey sighed. "I don't know if I deserve that." "Deserve's got nothing to do with it," the man said. "It's about what you're willing to fight for. What matters enough to make the pain worth it." Sergey stared at him, surprised by the unexpected wisdom. "Thanks," he said quietly. The man simply nodded, folded his newspaper, and left. Sergey sat there, alone again, but strangely, lighter. When he finally stood to leave, he paused by the counter. "Excuse me," he said to the barista. "Do you remember a woman who used to come here a lot? Brown hair, gentle voice, always reading poetry books." She smiled. "Of course. Olga, right? She was lovely. Haven't seen her in a while, though." Sergey swallowed hard. "Yeah, neither have I." As he walked back into the street, a thought settled in his mind like morning mist. Maybe I can fix this. Maybe not today, but someday. Later that evening, Sergey returned home. The apartment felt less empty than before. Like the ghost of hope was finally willing to stay. He placed the coffee-stained notebook on the table, and beside it, the letter. Then he sat on the couch and, for the first time, dialed Olga's number. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3. His heart pounded. Then her voice, soft, familiar, answered. "Hello." Sergey closed his eyes, letting the sound of her wash over him. "Olga. I'm sorry. Can we talk?" A pause. Then, "Yes, I think we should." His breath caught in his throat. Maybe this was the beginning of something new. Maybe the road home wasn't closed after all. That night felt different. After their brief call, Sergey couldn't sit still. His mind raced, heart pounding as if he'd just run for miles. The apartment seemed quieter, but not oppressively so. It was the quiet of anticipation, of something shifting in the air. He stood by the window, staring out at the city lights. Cars whispered past in the streets below. Somewhere, Distant laughter drifted up from an open window. Sergey closed his eyes and took a slow, careful breath. This is it, he thought. The beginning of the end. Or the start of something new. A message buzzed on his phone. Olga, tomorrow, 6 p.m., the old bridge by the park. Let's talk properly. His fingers trembled as he read it again and again. The old bridge, where they used to meet when they first started dating. That little wooden bridge surrounded by willows, overlooking the quiet stream. A place heavy with memories. For a moment, Sergey felt like breaking down. Not from fear, but from relief. There was hope. He spent the next hours pacing, cleaning, rereading the old letters they once exchanged. A dusty shoebox under the bed held old photographs. Him and Olga, smiling, young, careless. He traced the edges of the photos, remembering the warmth of her hand in his, the scent of her hair when she leaned against him. How did I forget this, he thought. How did I let it slip away? As the night deepened, he sat down and began writing again. Not a letter, but a confession to himself. I thought love meant excitement, drama, fireworks. But that's not real love. Real love is quiet, patient, safe. Real love waits for you when you are lost and welcomes you when you return. His pen moved across the page like a river, pouring out everything he'd hidden from himself. The mistakes, the fears, the selfishness. It was past midnight when he finally stopped writing. The apartment smelled of old paper and coffee. His phone buzzed again. This time not Olga. His new girlfriend. The woman he had hurt just as much. I know you're trying to fix things. I hope you find peace. A single sentence. Simple. Kind. No anger. No blame. Sergey stared at the message, guilt twisting in his stomach. She deserved more than this mess. More than his confusion and cowardice. I ruined everything for nothing, he thought. But then another thought came, calmer, clearer. Maybe ruining everything was what I needed to see the truth. Sleep came late and restless. Dreams of rain and bridges, of voices calling from across the water. Morning. The day of the meeting. Sergey dressed carefully, choosing a simple gray coat and black scarf. No cologne, no jewelry. Just himself. Honest. Bare. The walk to the bridge felt like crossing into another life. Every step echoed with old memories, laughter in the summer, whispered secrets in the fall, kisses stolen beneath the trees. As he approached the park, he saw her. Olga, standing at the far end of the bridge. She wore a dark coat and a scarf tucked beneath her chin. Her hair caught the light breeze, and for a moment, Sergey couldn't breathe. So much time had passed, but she looked the same. Or maybe it was the weight of memory making her seem timeless. He took a deep breath and crossed the bridge. Each step slow, measured, careful. They stood face to face. Neither spoke for a long moment. The only sound was the gentle murmur of water beneath the bridge. Finally, Olga broke the silence. Hello, Sergey. Hello. Her eyes searched his face, calm but unreadable. You wanted to talk. He nodded, swallowing hard. I do. I owe you everything. An apology. The truth. Olga folded her arms, waiting. Sergey took a breath. I was afraid, he began. Afraid of losing myself. Afraid of routine. I thought I needed something new. Something different. And I was wrong. His voice trembled. The days after the meeting on the bridge felt like walking through a dream. Sergey awoke early every morning now, his body pulling him from sleep as if unwilling to waste another minute. The apartment, once a prison of silence, now felt like a space waiting to be filled, with life, with meaning, with truth. He sat at the kitchen table, fingers wrapped around a cup of hot tea, staring at his phone. No new messages. But that was all right. Olga needed time. He understood that now. Patience. Real love is patience, he reminded himself. As the tea cooled, he thought about what lay ahead. Would they ever truly repair what was broken? Could trust be rebuilt, brick by brick? word by word? Or had the damage been too deep, too final? His thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. Sergey frowned, surprised. He wasn't expecting anyone. He set the cup down and crossed the room, opening the door to find his neighbor, Mrs. Novak, standing there with a gentle smile. "Good morning, Sergey," she said softly. "I heard. Well, I thought I'd bring you something." She held out a small basket of freshly baked rolls. He smiled, touched by the simple kindness. "Thank you. That's very thoughtful." She peered past him into the apartment. "Looks like you've been cleaning." "Good. Fresh starts need fresh places." Sergey chuckled, nodding. "Yes, that's the plan." Mrs. Novak's eyes sparkled with quiet wisdom. "Don't be too hard on yourself. We all lose our way sometimes. The trick is finding it again before it's too late." He thanked her again and closed the door, warmth spreading in his chest. The basket smelled of cinnamon and honey, reminding him of old winters, of home. As he sat down to eat, his phone buzzed. "Olga, coffee today?" 3 p.m. That little cafe by the bookstore. Sergey's heart skipped. He typed quickly, "I'll be there." The cafe was quiet, tucked between tall buildings on a side street. The smell of coffee and old paper filled the air, and gentle music played from a hidden speaker. Sergey arrived early, nerves coiling tight in his stomach. He chose a table by the window, watching the passers-by, wondering what Olga would say, what he would say. When she arrived, she looked calm, composed. But her eyes watched him carefully, measuring, weighing. "Hi," she said simply. "Hi." They ordered coffee, black for him, latte for her. Old habits. For a while, they sipped in silence. The tension felt like a thread stretched between them, fragile and ready to snap. Finally, Olga spoke. "I've been thinking." Sergey set his cup down, listening. "About us. About everything. I don't know if I can ever forget what happened, but I think maybe I can understand it. A little." He swallowed hard. "I was lost, Olga, and I made terrible choices, but I want to be better. For you. For myself." She nodded slowly. "That's what I needed to hear. Not excuses. Just honesty." Sergey leaned forward. "I'll never lie to you again. About anything. You deserve better than that." A small smile touched her lips. Maybe we can find a new way. Not the old way. Not pretending nothing happened. But something honest. Real." Hope flickered in his chest. "I want that. More than anything." For the first time in a long while, she reached across the table, her hand brushing his. Warm. Steady. "Then let's take it slow," she said softly. "No promises. No rushing. Just seeing where this goes." Sergey gripped her hand gently. Slow is perfect. They finished their coffee, talking quietly. About work. Friends. Memories. Like old times, but gentler. Wiser. When they left the cafe, the sky was soft with evening light. Olga turned to him, her face thoughtful. "I'm going to visit my sister this weekend," she said. "Time to clear my head." He nodded, understanding. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here." She smiled. "I know." And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving Sergey standing in the fading light. But this time, he didn't feel lost. This time, he felt patient. That night, he couldn't sleep. His mind spun with possibilities, fears, hopes. He paced the apartment, restless energy burning in his chest. He thought about calling his friend Michael, the one who warned him months ago, the one he hadn't spoken to since. Grabbing his phone, he dialed. "Michael? It's Sergey." A pause. Then Michael's voice, cautious but warm. "Sergey. Wow. Wasn't expecting this. I needed to call. You were right. About everything. And I was too blind to see it." Silence. Then, "People change, man. They learn. Sounds like you're learning." Sergey laughed softly, bitter and grateful. "Trying to. It's harder than I thought." "It's worth it," Michael said. "Real things always are." They talked for an hour, about mistakes, regrets, second chances. Sergey felt lighter after, as if confessing his failures had burned some of the shame away. When they finally hung up, he stood at the window, staring at the stars. I can do this, he thought. I can fix this. The next morning brought another message. Not from Olga. From his old boss. Sergey, there's an opening in our department. You interested? His breath caught. A chance to rebuild not just his relationship, but his career. He typed back. Yes. Tell me more. For the first time in months, the future didn't look like a blank wall. It looked like a door, and Sergey was ready to open it. The air had a crispness that hinted at the edge of autumn. Leaves clung stubbornly to branches, caught between seasons, just like Sergey. It had been several weeks since that quiet afternoon at the cafe, since the conversation that didn't fix everything, but started something new. In that time, Sergey had learned to appreciate quiet moments, small victories, and the slow rhythm of rebuilding. Today, though, felt different. He stood outside the building where he'd been offered a new job, a better one. Same field, but cleaner structure, better leadership, and a focus on people, not just profits. After everything that had happened, it felt symbolic. A restart not only in his relationship, but in his life. He glanced at his reflection in the glass door. His eyes looked more alert now, steadier, less clouded. His shoulders didn't sag with guilt. Not anymore. He stepped inside, greeted by the hum of an office awakening for the day. Later that evening, Sergey walked along the quiet riverbank. This was where it all began, the moment when his world tilted. The cold metal railing, the water below, the sound of distant traffic, it was all still there. But something inside him had changed. His phone buzzed. A message from Olga. I'm back in the city. Dinner tomorrow? I'll cook. He smiled, the warmth of her words sinking into him like sunlight. This was progress. This was possibility. Looking forward to it, he replied. As he slid the phone back into his pocket, Sergey sat on a nearby bench. He watched the water ripple under the dim street lights, breathing in the cool air. I'm still here, he thought. Still standing. The next day, he showed up to Olga's apartment with a bottle of wine and flowers, not out of guilt, but out of gratitude. She opened the door in casual clothes, her hair up, the familiar scent of garlic and rosemary drifting from the kitchen. Dinner was simple, roast chicken, salad, and mashed potatoes, but it felt more meaningful than any meal he'd eaten in months. They didn't talk about the past much that night. Instead, they laughed over old stories, shared thoughts about books and movies, and talked about the strange beauty of second chances. When the dishes were cleared and the wine nearly gone, Olga looked at him with a searching expression. Do you still dream of the other life? She asked softly. Sergey shook his head. I used to. I don't anymore. I used to think I was missing something, that I deserved more. But what I had was everything I needed. I just didn't see it. She leaned back, watching him with eyes no longer clouded by hurt. That's the thing about people, she said. We're always looking out the window, thinking the world outside is more exciting. Sometimes, it takes nearly losing what's inside to really understand it. He reached for her hand. She let him take it. No promises, no guarantees, just presence. That night, as he left her apartment and stepped into the night, Sergey felt something he hadn't in a long time. Peace. It wasn't the end of the story, but it was the beginning of a new chapter. Weeks passed. Work stabilized. Trust slowly returned. Even his parents, long silent from his mistakes, reached out with an invitation for lunch. He accepted. Olga didn't move back in, but they saw each other more. And with each moment, the cracks in their past became part of the mosaic, not its flaw. One day, walking through the park, Sergey noticed a young couple arguing on a bench. The man's face was red, his voice too loud. The woman looked tired, more sad than angry. Sergey almost passed them by, But then he stopped, turned, and offered the man a simple phrase. Don't say something you can't take back. The man looked up, startled. Sergey just nodded and walked on. Sometimes the smallest truths came from the deepest wounds. Sergey stands in his apartment, no longer empty, no longer echoing. A framed photo of him and Olga rests on the shelf. Next to it, a small notebook labeled Things I've Learned. He opens it and adds one more line. Love isn't perfect, but it's worth the work. He closes the book, takes a breath, and smiles.